My friend, welcome to the world's best kept secret podcast, the podcast that shows spiritual entrepreneurs how to clarify their message and then how to turn that clarity into revenue. I'm your host, Prima Jope, a mentor and message expert since 2020. Whether you seek to simply clarify your message or feel ready to monetize your brilliance, this is your safe space for actionable guidance and practical tools on how to turn your woo into predictable revenue. Let's get started, shall we? Welcome back. Today is my best day because we're going to talk about all things conscious parenting. If you're the type of person that is already conscious, that is already self-aware, that already knows that we probably didn't grow up and get given the best tools to go through life, if you're the kind of person that already understands that the formal education did not really give you the tools you needed to thrive in life, this is your place. We're going to talk about parenting in a new way. Like, what if you didn't have to do it the way your mother did it? What if you didn't have to be the same parent that you had? What if you didn't have to repeat the same patterns your parents repeated? What if you had a choice to parent in a different way, where you didn't have to control your kids, where you didn't have to have power struggles, where you didn't have to bribe your kids to do things? What if there was a different way to parent without feeling like you're losing yourself to the process? My friends often say the parenting phase is a chaotic place we have to prepare for. Like, Prima, when you get married, prepare for 10 years of the mess and then you can have your life again. And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't have 10 years to give away because of something called parenting. What if I could parent and still have Prima time and still be Prima and still just enjoy the kids? What if there was a way to give yourself the opportunity as a parent to just do it in a way that is by design and not by default? What if that was the case? Would that be worth it? That's what we're going to talk about today. My guest, Jamie Buzzelle, is the repair parent coach. Like, if parenting hasn't been going well for you, you feel stressed, overwhelmed, and all of the things, we have some stuff for you. Pull your stool, pull your tea, pull your drink, and let's have a chat. She's been doing this for 5 years. She's someone who had a complicated childhood because the parents and her didn't agree on certain things. She's someone who's had to go through parenting as a broken child, or someone who had real struggles with her parents. She's had herself repeat the same patterns that she saw in herself growing up. And she's come up with a way not to see that again. She's kind of come up with a way to get her own freedom back as a parent and enjoy the process of parenting rather than dread it, rather than traumatize her kids. She's found a way to make it a partnership. And so if this is worth for you, dig in, because today we're relearning from the tears, frustrations, and school of hard knocks for Jamie. That's what she's offering us. And I don't know if there is any other way that a guest can bless us than that. So let's dig in. Jamie, welcome to the show. I can't wait to dig in.
Thank you. What a beautiful opening. I appreciate that so much.
What is it that we can add to that opening to make it such a no-brainer for the work you do? I want the listener to understand exactly what you do and how you do it and why it is such an important topic.
I think the biggest thing, and when I became a parent, no one asked me, what kind of parent do you want to be? And I think this is a very important question. And it's one that I would venture to guess most of you listening have not been asked, and maybe you haven't even stopped to ask yourselves. And so when I sat back, as I looked at my little toddler when he was 2 and put him on the stairs for his, 30th time out, and realized that not only was he not learning anything from the timeout, but I felt awful and disconnected. What kind of parent do I want to be? And my parents terrified me as a child. I ran away from them emotionally. I lied to them. I hid my feelings from them. I feared them. I did not trust them. And I looked at my toddler sitting on those stairs in his diaper, so young, so tiny, so dependent on me, not understanding why he was on those stairs. And I knew that I wanted to be a different kind of parent. And I knew that I was already laying this groundwork for him to be afraid of me. And I just couldn't do it. And that would be the first question that I would ask myself to any of your listeners is just what kind of parent do you want to be? And what I decided in that moment was I wanted to be the kind of parent that my child runs to and not away from.
Mm.
And I
That
think
is
this is
really
a
good.
very, yeah,
Mm.
I think it's critical. And the more I learned about brain development and, all the things, the more I learned that those critical years of childhood before they fly the nest and become their own people and have their own families, we don't get much time with them.
Mm.
And relationship is everything. And this is where I place my value with my child. And this is what I coach to my clients.
That's really good. What happens when, give me kind of the idea of what happens when I just stay in auto and I just, like my friends, they believe they need 5 years, 10 years, lost to parenting, lost to chaos, lost to these power struggles and all of
Mm-hmm.
the friction. And hopefully they'll get their life back 10 years later. But I've challenged them like, so do you have a contract that you're going to be around 10 years later?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if you actually die in the second or
Mm-hmm.
third year? Then what? Is this all? Like, is this your life? Like, is this all? So, like, what would you say to someone who is wrapped around the idea of, I don't even know there's better. Like, I didn't know. Like, I thought it was this power struggle of me yelling at my kids, of
Mm-hmm.
me bribing my kids. Like, it was this chaos of,
Mm-hmm.
let's do this parenting thing. Who knows what will happen tomorrow? Like, what would you open with as words of like, okay, this is
Mm-hmm.
how to kind of look at things, and this is
Yeah.
what is possible for you. And if you're interested in these choices, let's keep talking.
Sure. Yeah, I think the first thing that I would say is that that's not your fault and that
Mm,
we have been really conditioned in this society to believe that children are bad.
mm,
Think about how we discipline and the way that we respond to what we perceive to be poor behaviors. And so when a toddler, is doing what is developmentally appropriate, throwing things, immediately the parent is, well, how do I get my child under control? How do I get them to stop doing this thing? Or when we have a teenager that is, perceived as being disrespectful. It is, how do I get my teenager to stop disrespecting me? How do I get them to do the things that I need them to do? And the theme, whether it's a teenager or a toddler or an elementary child, if you didn't pick up on it, was how do I get them to? That's control. There's an element of control in parenting. And it's not, I'm pointing it out not as a way to shame because we're programmed. This is how we're conditioned, is to think that children need control in order to quote unquote stay in line, to be good. And we are really underestimating human condition to be wired for connection. And what
mm,
we actually now know about the brain is that from an evolutionary perspective, the way that we have evolved to get to where we're at as humans is through cooperation.
mm,
And we don't need control to get our children to do the things that we want them to do. And in fact, the more that we try and control, the more that we try and kind of buckle in and close off their options, their ability to think for themselves, we actually see, and the studies are there, the data is there, the science is there, the more they actually rebel. And so for those of you out there that might be thinking, I don't know, my teens need a lot of control in order to keep them in line. I would actually invite you to consider when you were a teenager and what it was like for you growing up. And those feelings of if you were raised in a very controlling environment, how did that make you feel? Because I
Mm,
remember how it felt, and I felt so much distrust. I felt very judged without really anything to back it up. And it made me feel
mm,
like, well, then I might as well just break rules because if they don't trust me anyway, I might as
mm,
well just get in trouble. And so the more that we believe in our children, and this is not to say that we don't have to have boundaries and, of course, guidelines to follow.
mm,
It's more around how we get to that place, and there is a way to consciously connect with our children and still have rules and boundaries and a peaceful home that you are not screaming at your kids every day and then feeling guilty every night. And if you're doing that, you're not a failure. You just don't have tools. And none of us do. We're given this baby, we're sent home from the hospital, and everybody just kind of says, good luck to you. And when you don't have the tools that you need to succeed, just like in business, just like in sports, just like in fitness, you
mm,
hire a coach. And with
mm,
parenting, it's no different. And I was not given any tools. So when I was sent home with my baby, I started to resort to the things that I did growing up or had experienced growing up because I didn't know any better. And
mm,
this is what happens. We repeat the things that we know when we don't know any better.
mm. This is so good. I am just here wondering, our parents did what they did with the tools they had. They did their best with what they had. And I
Hmm.
think I've heard you
Hmm.
say that our parents did their best with what they had. But the world
Yes.
has changed, and there's a lot of noise,
Yes.
and there's a lot of exposure for the kids, and there's a lot of influence, and there's a lot of
Mm.
influencers. And the
Hmm.
kids have internet, and oh
Hmm.
my God, it is now like I can't imagine trying to use what my mom used to parent me because it would never work. And we're trying to use the
Hmm.
same tools that mom used, our mothers used in today's world, which is
Right.
much more complicated. But my question to you is, how is this possible? How is such a level of freedom and peace and surrender possible? Like if I was listening in and I needed to cage my kids some days, and that's how kind of I was doing it the military way. Mom has woken up,
Hmm.
hide the phone, hide whatever the thing you're doing.
Sure.
What is that process of coming around to the flexibility? Because what I'm feeling right now is sending my kids to the rehabilitation center with your
Yeah.
method, which you're saying, I feel like my kids will be dragging or whatever. They'll
No.
be out of
Yeah.
control. That's how I
Right.
think. Like I can't
Sure.
possibly breathe and have a teenager who is not pregnant. That's how I'm
Right.
thinking. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and that's fair, and it actually makes sense that you feel that way because again, we are conditioned in our society to think that if we're not controlling our kids, they're going to go crazy. And again, I am not saying that we don't have boundaries, and I'm not saying we don't have rules. My son has a lot of boundaries and a lot of rules, and it's the way that we communicate them, and it's the way that we allow our children to have feelings around those boundaries. So what's different about a conscious parenting model versus the more traditional kind of power
Mm,
authoritarian model that a lot of us that are listening today are probably more familiar with isn't that the rules go out the window. And this is very much up right now in social media. There's this whole movement against quote unquote gentle parenting, that it's too permissive. And I agree that it can become very permissive when you don't have the tools to do it the
mm,
right way. Um, but what the conscious gentle parenting movement is rooted in is it's rooted in understanding developmentally where your child is at and
mm,
responding from those expectations of what to expect from your child at each developmental stage. So, what does
mm,
that look like when I say that? Well,
mm,
as an example, if I have a 7-year old, I'm going to use seven because my son is 7, and he's on a gaming device. I'm going to use games and devices because this is up for every single age group, right? So he has a Nintendo Switch, and he has a time limit on it. So when the time limit goes off, or when I, decide, or when we decide whatever that time limit is, we have a rule, which is 2 times, and then we step in to help him. So the power struggle would be, hey, buddy, it's time to get off your Switch. And he doesn't get off the Switch. Hey, buddy, I said it's time to get off your Switch. He doesn't get off the Switch. Now I'm upset. I've asked him twice. He's not listening. This goes back and forth. It escalates. Now we're fighting. Everybody's mad. This is permissive parenting. When you have asked over and over again, and your child is not listening, and you're angry because you are expecting your child to meet an expectation that they have showed you through their behavior that they cannot meet, that's permissive parenting. Gentle parenting, conscious parenting, is after the second time, if they have not met your expectation, help them, because they have shown you through their behavior they cannot meet your expectation. So at the 2-time mark, I say, you're showing me that it's hard to get off. I get it. Games are really fun, but it's dinner time. I'm going to take your Switch away from you. You can play it tomorrow. I take the Switch away. He might protest. That's okay. We allow the protest. I turn off the Switch. I get it. You're mad. It's dinner time. Now, when you are transitioning from that power struggle to this, all of a sudden you have authority. I'm asserting my authority as his parent. That's different than authoritarian. I have not sent him to his room because he's angry. I just say, I get it. You're upset. I'm the mom. I've made the decision. I'm taking this Switch away. That uptick in behavior of him protesting may happen for a while, because when we've suppressed behavior, suppressed feelings for so long, and then you start to allow it, it will come out in spades for a bit, right? Because they need to learn how to regulate those emotions. But now my son, after practicing this at 7, I will say it's time to get off. 2 prompts, he knows I mean business. So he gets off of it and he puts it away. There's no more power struggle around it. He knows I mean business, but I don't fight with him. I do not argue with him about it. He knows it's done. Did that take a while to get to a place where he respects that boundary? Absolutely. But it's worth it, because he now knows mom means business. There's no power struggle. We don't have to fight about it. That's conscious parenting.
So if I was thinking through it like a process, or if you want to use examples and all of that, that's fine. But I would kind of like to either see a process of how I need to start thinking, or perhaps different scenarios of people and how that came to be, because from where I'm parenting from, I may have a lot of fears, a lot of resistance, and a lot of unawareness, a lot of, I don't know. I'm like, is that possible? Like, tell me more. So there's a parent listening going, okay, better be kidding me. Is it that easy? And they've probably been parenting for the longest time. And I don't know if you can give us more towards kind of how to look at that process, or that switch, or that shift.
Yeah, I mean, it is and it isn't. You have to be willing to put in the work to have a different result, right? I mean, parenting isn't easy, but where do you want to invest your time? Do you want to invest your time in helping your child build the skills that they need that will take them all the way through adulthood? So if I want to spend the time fighting with my kid and being miserable, or spend the time teaching him that I have a boundary, you need to follow it. Yes, he's going to be frustrated. There's going to be pushback, but through that pushback, he learns how to regulate his emotions. I'm going to invest the time where I know it pays off in spades for the rest of his life, because I'm raising a boy. In this society, boys are taught that they are not allowed to have any emotions except anger, right? So I'm also thinking about, in terms of how to raise a man that actually is comfortable with his feelings, so that he's not angry with his spouse, whether there's so much nuance to not suppressing feelings as a child. So there's a lot to unpack there, and I get that. But it's also about an investment in your child as an adult. We are raising a child to become an adult that has to function in the world. We talk about we want our kids to have grit. We want our kids to have emotional resilience. And I will guarantee you that the child that you continue to fight with and have power struggles with is not the child that's going to be resilient. The child that's going to be resilient is the one that's allowed to say, I'm pissed. I'm not happy that I can't have my Switch. And you go, yeah, you're pissed. I get it. I'd be pissed too. But you know what? I'm still going to take it away from you because I'm your mom and I love you. And it's my job to have some limits with you. And he goes, all right. And then he moves on with his day. Now, again, that does not happen in one practice of that. This is a practice. It is a marathon. It is not a sprint. But these are your children. Did you expect? We can't expect. These are human beings. They're not dogs. They cannot be trained. This is a practice. And so some days he's going to push me harder on it. It is not absolutely not that I have this perfect, peaceful household. I still lose my temper. And when I lose my temper with my son, I repair. I come back to him and I say, hey, you are not responsible for how I behave. I am sorry that I lost my temper. It is never okay for me to speak to you that way. Because that's also what is gentle, conscious parenting. It's rooted in the fact that even though my son may only be 7 and I'm 46, we are, in terms of equity, human beings. And I give him the same equitability of being a human being. He deserves the same level of respect in this home that I do. It is not different because I am his parent. So that's another piece of this is like we can have authority as parents and still be respectful when we're speaking to our children. So there's a lot there. And I understand what you're saying, that it's difficult to grasp this idea that we can have both. We can actually like have joy and enjoy our kids, but also have boundaries. But I know that it's possible because it is in my home every single day. And I know that it's possible because before, when I didn't do it that way, before when I hadn't gotten coached on this myself, and my husband and I would battle over this, and he was so resistant to it, he got coached on it, and it completely shifted his perspective. And it changed our entire communication process around our son. And now our son is a completely different child. He is happier, he's more regulated, he communicates better. He, it really does have this trickle effect of this freedom to be able to speak his mind. He's not afraid of us. He says how he feels. And that to me is worth its weight in gold because this will affect him for the rest of his life. This ability for him to be able to express himself. And of course, there's boundaries around how he expresses himself. But when he says it in a disrespectful way, instead of me saying, don't you speak to me that way, go to your room, I say, oof, I know you're upset, but I don't like how you said that to me. You want to try again? Doesn't that sound so much more calming and reassuring and coming from a place of love? But I'm still setting a boundary that I don't want him to speak to me that way. So it's really just about how we show up for our kids and how we respond instead of being reactive.
Hey, Jeremy, so far you've given me like a bag, like a rucksack. I want to call it like the mom's toolkit. And I'm putting things in, spanner, everything. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go try this thing. You've dropped on things like repair. I'm like, okay. You've dropped in things like boundaries. And I'm like, okay. You've dropped
Sure.
in things like communication. You've dropped in a
Mm-hmm.
lot of hints, but I'm still not
Mm-hmm.
sure if I'm missing some things in my tool bag. So if you were to
Mm-hmm.
pack a lunch for me in a
Mm-hmm.
rucksack as a mother, and I was going to go try this thing with my child, what
Mm-hmm.
needs to be in there? What else needs to be in there?
There needs, this is a very nuanced question. And I'm going to be as simple as I can with it because I know where you're going with this and I do understand. There has to be a level of self-awareness with the parent. You have to be aware of what your beliefs are about what you're witnessing with your child. And that's kind of where it starts. And so it really starts with the parent. What are we signaling to our children when we're sitting there battling them? What are we believing about what we are witnessing? And if we believe that our children are bad, if we believe that they are manipulating us, if we believe that they are giving us a hard time on purpose, we've already lost this quote unquote battle with our kids. We have to know in our core, and I can assure you that they are not giving us a hard time. They are not manipulating us. Our children, especially young children, don't even have the brain development to be manipulative. It is not even, that's not even, they're not even capable of it. So it really truly starts with some self-awareness for the parent to go, ooh, I'm triggered. I'm feeling a certain way. What's going on for me? And that was that moment for me, going back to when I said when my son was 2 and sitting on the stairs and I'm watching him, it wasn't about his behavior. It was about me. What am I doing? Why do I believe that my son is so bad or so whatever I believed about him, that my behavior was to react in a way that I needed to control him? And that's when it shifted for me, where I was like, wait a second, he's 2. He has 2 years on this planet. I'm the one that has all of the control and the authority. Maybe this has nothing to do with him. And so I think the first thing that I would stick in my backpack is, what's going on for me?
What do I need to deal with?
Yep. What do I need to deal with? And that's what made me realize how much of the way that we respond to our children, and even I would say in relationships in general, is coming from our own history, our own past, our own beliefs, what molded us to get to a place where I'm sitting in front of you right now today is all it's, everything leads to this moment. And, people ask me a lot, like, is it really that deep? Like, is it that deep? It is absolutely that deep. And it's actually very interesting to me. And it's part of why I became a coach, is because I've always been so fascinated by the human condition and, all the things like what makes you tick, what makes you you. This is what makes us us. And when we can understand and make sense of where we came from, why we are the way that we are, this is why we operate the way that we do in the world. And of course, it is going to inform how we parent. And so again, it is not to shame past generations. It is not to shame yourself. We can hold two truths. So there's another piece of this where parents have to kind of be able to not swallow it whole when they acknowledge that they've made mistakes. And so you need to be able to separate your behavior and your personhood. This is very difficult for people to do. You are not who you are on your worst day. Your child is not who they are on their worst day. I wish that somebody would have told me that as a child when I made mistakes. And this one chokes me up a lot because this is not something that was reinforced to me as a child. So, I made mistakes. I got in trouble. I did things. I made bad choices. And every time I did, and I was yelled at and I was screamed at and I was punished and finger in the face and all the things. Not one time, and all the times that I got in trouble did my mother ever say to me, you made a bad choice, but you know what? You are a good kid. And you are still a good kid. And I still love you. You are still lovable. You are still a good kid. And it's okay to make mistakes. Your choice was not okay, but you are a good kid. What ends up happening with that is, as an adult, I would take a mistake and swallow it whole. And by swallowing it whole, what I mean was I could not tolerate making a mistake without believing that every part of me, my whole identity, was caught up in that mistake. So if somebody said, you hurt my feelings, then I'm hurtful. I am a hurtful person. I'm bad. I'm all the things. So when we look at how we parent, you have to be able to separate, okay, I messed up with my kid. That does not make you a bad parent. You can say, okay, I lost my temper with my child. That's it. Done. Repair and move on. It doesn't make you a bad parent. Just like when your child makes a bad choice, that's it. They made a bad choice. They're still a good kid. They are still worthy of all of the love and the everything that they were worthy of 20 minutes before they shoplifted or they broke a window or they did the thing. And I
Mm,
truly believe that the more we can separate behavior from personhood, the more we are instilling a beautiful sense of self. But it starts with us, because how many times has any one of the listeners listening today, how many times have you, when your kid makes a mistake, gone, I am a failure as a parent. What have I done wrong? You haven't done anything wrong. They're human. You have not done a thing. They're just
mm,
navigating the world and it's messy. So you have to be able to separate their personhood from their behavior, and you have to be able to separate your personhood from your behavior.
mm. Is there more?
Is there more?
Yeah, more things to
Yeah.
put in the backpack.
Yes, yes. So speaking about behavior, the deeper part of behavior that I think a
Mm,
lot of people do not understand is they think that behavior in and of itself is controllable, and they think that behavior in and of itself is correctable. And behavior is simply a symptom of something deeper. And so when you address a behavior as a symptom, meaning it's almost like medical care, right? So if I go in and I have like a rash and the
mm,
doctor gives me a cream for my rash and I leave and the rash goes away because I have a cream, but then 6 weeks later I'm back in because the rash came back and maybe there's an
mm,
underlying allergy. If I don't fix the allergy, that rash is going to keep coming back. So behavior's the same. So if I have a child that's exhibiting a behavior and I correct the behavior, but then 6 weeks later, that behavior comes back or something else comes up, it's because there's an underlying need or feeling that is associated to that behavior. When we don't understand where that behavior is coming from and we just correct the surface behavior, we are not getting underneath what is going on. So, for every parent who witnesses a behavior with a child, get curious. That's something
mm,
else. Curiosity, slap that in your backpack. Curiosity. Curiosity will get you so much further in any relationship that you are in, and especially with your children. And so rather than when a child makes a, poor choice, why did you do that? What are you doing? What were you thinking? Gosh,
mhm.
that's an interesting choice. How come you did that?
Mm,
And now, even just the way that it's said to me, if I'm a child, and the first way is terrifying, and I'm not going to want to say anything, I'd probably shut down and be like, I don't
mm,
know, and I'd be terrified. The second way, I'm like, I don't know, maybe it was this, or maybe it feels safer.
It
So
invites me to explore. It's an invitation to
yes,
to kind of have a look at, take a look. What did you choose at?
yeah. And it also invites critical thinking. It also puts the parent and the child in the same driver's seat of problem solving. It's you and me against a problem. It is not pitting the child against the parent. So
Mm,
curiosity and recognizing that a behavior is only indicative of an unmet need or a feeling
mm.
is also incredibly critical for parents to understand.
Would you say behavior is the same as character?
Sorry, behavior is the same as what?
Character. Character.
We don't need to focus on the behavior and correct the behavior. We need
Mm,
to get underneath the behavior. Correcting behavior is behaviorism, essentially. And this is why, like in schools, reward charts and having children do certain things to make certain changes at school usually only works for a short period of time. Behavior charts typically don't work because children do the best they can with the tools they have at the time, just like
mm,
adults. And a lot
mm,
of times it's a developmental issue. It is not a behavioral issue. And so we are expecting children to meet a behavioral expectation that developmentally they cannot meet.
mm. Wow. Is there more to put in the backpack, or is this like enough for us to start?
I would say that for now that's probably enough because I've given you a lot and it's the
Mm,
backpack's just going to continue to get heavier. But what I
mm,
will say is that when you are getting coached, this is done over the course of 12 weeks. This is not done in like one session
Mm.
because it takes time to go through these processes. It takes time to unpack some of these things. And also it
Mm.
takes time to change. And
Mm.
it's little tiny things. And that's where you see the biggest shifts. It's not completely overhauling your parenting. So like, as an example, that gaming option, like that one power struggle can lead, eliminating that one power struggle, just shifting from continuously telling your child over and over and over again to do something and then fighting with them to, I'm going to give them 2 times. And if they don't listen, I'm going to intervene and help them.
Mhm.
That can absolutely shift many things in your household. You don't have to use it just for gaming. You can use it for all kinds of stuff. So
Mhm.
there's ways that you can just do tiny things that will shift dynamics very quickly.
Progress over overwhelm. So let me kind of what is it? Let me recap what I've understood. First thing is like
Sure.
self-awareness. Because if you're being
Hmm.
triggered, whether it's by your child, your spouse, your family, whoever, being triggered and being really thrown into a place you don't want to be, that's your problem.
Hmm.
The other person might have done something, said something, but you being triggered and giving away the power, that's your problem to deal with. That's
Correct.
your problem to that's the thing you need to look into. Like, why am I giving away my power? Why am I losing my
Hmm.
temper? Why am I saying things I don't want to say? It's not the other person, even though they may have triggered you. It is something inside of you that needs to probably heal or something like that. So
Hmm.
I love that you brought that up. The other thing was, which I really picked, was separating your mistakes from who you are. You're not your
Hmm.
mistakes. And
Hmm.
really instilling that in your children, because this
Hmm.
can go a long way healing these children
Hmm.
and creating like less trauma. Because
Hmm.
what a parent says can really take you and ride you all your life and really traumatize you. So this is like
Hmm.
one way not to traumatize the child is making it obvious that they are not
Hmm.
their mistakes and they're still great kids, even though they might have done the other thing that is not
Hmm.
as good. The other
Yeah.
thing is like repair, like remember to repair and just move on. There's
Hmm.
nothing permanent there. Repair and move on. And I like what you're saying because a lot of people don't understand that you're different. There's a separation between the character or the behavior or the thing someone is doing with, let me see if I can say it well. But I like what you had there saying, like, separate the behavior. Don't conclude. Like, if your child started drugs at some point, don't make a conclusion that, they're drug addicts. Be curious. Why
Hmm.
are they taking drugs?
Yeah.
Why
Why
are
do they need to
they
escape?
what are
What
they
are they trying to
escaping
escape?
from? And I
Hmm.
think this lesson can even just go to like other things, spouse, and if they're over drinking, like what is there? What are
Yeah.
they escaping from that is
Hmm.
causing the behavior, the
Yeah.
character, whatever it is that is showing up? Be curious and kind of
Yes.
go there because you will be surprised that when you take away the roots, the behavior disappears. I really
Yeah.
like that. I
I
like
heard
that.
this story that really resonated with me around a really good example of why, when we make assumptions about behavior, we really miss the mark.
Mm-hmm.
This child had spent like hundreds of dollars on movies, like streaming movies for his phone. And his parents were obviously really upset because he didn't ask permission. And they decided rather than, just getting angry at him for spending all this money, they didn't want to make assumptions that he just, was impulsive and wanted to, and had no respect for money and all those things. And they were like, how come you spent all this money? And it turned out that he had a ton of anxiety about riding the bus home. And he was just terrified to be on the bus, and he just didn't want to interact with people. And his coping mechanism was, well, I'll just download a bunch of movies and then I can just put on my headset and watch movies and just check out and I don't have to worry about it. Now, that's a solvable problem. That's
Mm-hmm.
something that we can deal with, is an anxiety around being socially around people, whatever. Let's work on that. We can figure out a way to maybe do a pickup, or, there's other options there. But most parents would go, why would you spend our money? You have no respect. You know, you would immediately go to that behavior and make all of these assumptions around why this child did that. Now, he's a child. He does not have the skills to recognize that that was a choice that he made and all of the fallout of that because he's a child. Their frontal lobe is still developing. They don't recognize that there's consequences for their choices. He was just figuring out a way to fix a problem in the moment, and he did not have the, you know, so my point is that this is a perfect example of where when we assign meaning to a behavior without understanding why a child makes a choice that they make, and sometimes they just don't really have a reason why, there is no meaning, they just are impulsive, we may be really missing what a core issue is. And so in that case, that was probably the beginning of an anxiety disorder. And by really understanding where this child was coming from with the level of anxiety he was experiencing on the bus, they were able to actually then start to work with him through that anxiety instead of just addressing the spending money and the downloading of movies.
Instead of making him wrong, instead of making that his identity, instead of making it
Mm-hmm.
you're a bad kid because, and him
Yes.
thinking, my parents don't love me enough, I'm a bad kid, and taking that,
Yep.
because this even happens to adults. Instead
Mm-hmm.
of making an assumption, what if you could ask a question? It's interesting that
Yeah.
I see
Yeah.
this.
Trust.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and trusting him to go, what
Mm,
is going on, sweetheart? Like, we saw all this money. Like, what's happening? Like, what, you know, just the curiosity and
mm,
responding from a place of love. And so I remind parents often, like, when you took that baby boy or baby girl home from the hospital, you had nothing but pure love. And so when
mm,
you see your child behaving in a way that is less than desirable, tap into that pure love first. Lean on
mm,
relationship first. Don't lean on behavior. Don't lean on transactions. Don't lean on, well, they're not doing their laundry and they're being disrespectful and they're not cleaning their room and all those things. Why are they,
mm,
what is getting in the way of all of those things, especially teens? I have a real soft spot for teens because they struggle and they're misunderstood. And, you know,
mm,
but let's go back to that day coming home from the hospital and holding that baby of pure love and how that is what we need to get back to. We need to get back to relationship. And
mm.
this is where you will see children blossom. When they feel seen, heard, held, loved, respected, they will blossom. And I will die on that hill every single time.
I
Every
think
single
this
time.
this really works in relationships. It works in many ways. If there is a relationship that is tough to navigate, some of this will be really helpful. Like curiosity, that is really gold. We
Yeah.
never know what the other person is dealing with. We
Yeah.
never know the root cause of it. When we
Yeah.
assume, we attack. When we attack, they
Mm-hmm.
defend. When they
Mm-hmm.
defend, now they need to be right, and there's no opening for healing, there's no opening for going
Yes.
deep because it's not safe,
Yes.
because it's a label, because it's I
Yes.
really like this. You told me a story, and I really hope I remember properly, about a mother who had a complicated relationship
With
with
her
her
son.
son. Yes,
Yeah.
would you love to tell that story?
I love this story. Yes. So I coached a mom who has two sons, and her older son and her really had gone through it. They had had a really contentious relationship for basically, he was 18 at the time that we started working together and was getting
Mm,
ready to enlist in the military. And he
mm,
still lived at home, but basically, they barely spoke to each other. He locked himself in his room and he was on games constantly. And that was about it. He came out to eat and then grab his food, go back into his room, shut his door. That was it. And
mm,
so when she came to me, she kind of had lost hope that they would even reconcile, that she had sort of convinced herself that once he deployed or enlisted, that he would be gone forever.
mm,
And so she really thought initially that this would be more around him and that I would be giving her tasks to bring to him
mm,
to help him work on things that he could be doing to help their relationship. And very quickly, she learned that this is parent centric and it's parent coaching.
mm,
And so a lot of the work was around her. I gave her one task to do that it actually had to do with him. And this is what it was. I said, go to his room every day, knock on his door. And At first, he may not even let you in, and that's okay. Don't give up. He's going to be gruff. He's going to be dismissive. He's got his walls up. His defenses are up. Don't buy into it. Don't take the bait. Just keep going back. Eventually, he's going to open the door and he's going to be grumpy and he's going to be annoyed because you're interrupting his games, and just anticipate all of the, get away from me stuff that teens do.
Mm-hmm.
And just say, I just wanted to say hi. Do you care if I come in and sit on your bed for a minute? And what I want you to commit to is, if you can do it, 2 minutes a day, every single day, just 2 minutes, 120 seconds. Once he lets you in that room, do not ask him about, did you do the dishes that I asked you to do? Don't talk to him about chores. Don't talk to him about transactions, nothing. Just sit with your boy. Let him play his video games. Don't criticize him. Don't ask him about the game. Ask him, who are you playing with? What's the game? What's the point? Get into his world. So she was like, I don't see this going well, but okay. And so the first week, he, of course, was like, she'd knock on the door, what? And can I come in? I'm in the middle of a game. And she's like, okay. And so a couple days go by and she keeps trying, and she's like diminutive in size. She's this teensy human and he towers over her. So just, you have to picture also the physical part of it. So finally, I don't remember how many days it was, but within the first week, he finally opens the door, mostly because her persistence probably annoyed him. And he's like, what do you want? And she's like, can I just come and sit next to you? And he's like, why? And she's like, well, I just miss you and I love you. Can I just like sit on your bed? And he's like, fine. So she did that. And so this goes on for a week or two, and the 2 minutes turns into 5. And then slowly he starts talking to her and he starts sharing things with her. And then she notices that when he comes down to eat, he's actually sticking around in the kitchen for a while. And then she notices that one night he sticks around after the meal and watches a show with them. And then she notices one day we get on our call for our weekly session and his door is left open to his room. And I remember at that time, I said, he's left the proverbial door and the literal door open for you. And I had chills because I didn't know if it would work. Like, truly, sometimes with coaching, this is me attempting to give her a tiny bit of connection with her son, but I don't know him personally, right? I don't know her personally. So this is also me like using what I think I know is going to work based on what I understand about human connection and coaching and my history and my background and experience, but like maybe it doesn't work. So when she says that, I just get chills, and she's like, Jamie, I can't believe this. So then they go out to dinner one night, and normally he's always invited, but he always says no. So the next time they go, he goes. Then it gets to the point where one day I'm on my way somewhere in my car and she calls me and she's in tears. And of course, immediately I hear tears and I'm like, oh gosh, what has happened? Did they fight? Like, no. She's crying happy tears because this, and I'm going to protect them, just privacy wise and not say what his hobby is, but he has this hobby. He's had it for a long time, and it's always been a hobby that he does with only dad. And one day, this was about 8 weeks into our 12 weeks together. And she came into the kitchen and her son and dad were talking about going to do this hobby. And she kind of just casually said, like, what are you guys talking about? And the son said, oh, we're going to go do XYZ. And then he casually goes, do you want to come? And when she told me that, she was crying. And I go, oh gosh, what did you say? And she goes, well, I was trying not to freak out because I didn't want to scare him off. And we kind of joked that at that point we made a joke, I remember, about like, you don't want to scare off your teen. They're like wild animals, like if you are too overexcited. And she said, I kind of was like, yeah, sure, whatever. Like, sounds cool. But she's sobbing and she's like, he has never once invited me to do this activity with him ever. Not once.
Wow.
So that's the power of connection. 2 minutes. It took 2 minutes, 8 weeks to go from him not speaking to her, his door closed, never around her, rolling his eyes at her, And in 8 weeks of starting with 2 minutes, he invited her to join him on his absolutely favorite activity.
Wow.
And that's the only thing that I had her do with him directly. Now, she was doing her own work, her own emotional work with me, working through her past stuff, of course. But that was the only thing between the two of them that I had her do with him. And he noticed, whether it was unconscious or not, he started to feel that she cared about him as a human.
Wow. It really just speaks to how much power we have over our
I
own
know.
realities, circumstances that we keep giving
Yeah.
away to the other person when he goes to therapy, when he mans up, when he becomes a better son. But really, most of the answers can be found inside of us. What can I do to make this a better relationship?
Well, yeah, because when she shifted, that's when he shifted.
Yeah.
So it was
So,
within her all the time. It was always within her. It was parents have so much power, and we can either use that to have this flourishing, amazing connection with our children, or we can push them away and not even realize that we're doing it. And we do just have so much more power than we realize. And children, even teens, are so sensitive, and they are looking to us constantly to say, am I worthy? Am I lovable? Do you still love me even when I'm at my worst? And so if are responding to them at their worst with our worst, and we're escalating worst to worst to worst to worst to worst, they believe that they are their worst. They do become their worst. And so we have to keep responding back to them with, this is not who you are, buddy. I love you. How come? What's going on? We have to keep responding with that love of that baby boy or girl that came home from the hospital. That's what she did. She got back to the core of like, I just love you and I miss you. And if this is what it takes for me to see you every day, is sitting on your bed for 2 minutes and understanding this crazy video game that I don't get, I'm going to take it. And he saw that, and he bought into it, and he loved it. And it completely rebuilt their relationship.
Um, I really don't know if we've said enough, but the programming that you can put in your child, I don't know. It is, when I understood this, I was sobbing. Like, you can traumatize your child, you can program them to feel shame, blame, and all of the things. You can limit how much, where they go and what happens of them without even realizing. And I don't know if you can say anything more to that, but as a parent, a lot of this programming is right into your hands, like right into your
Yeah.
hands.
Well, what I would say is that it's never too late. And so if there's any parents out there that are estranged or that are really struggling, it's never too late. And so you always have an opportunity as the parent to right the ship. You are the captain of the ship. You are the pilot of the plane, whatever metaphor you want to use. You are the one that can have the power to repair. And it may mean that you have to go back on, your proverbial knees and say, whatever I have done, I love you. And I want to hear more. And I'm curious what it was like for you being raised by me. And that may mean hearing things that you don't want to hear. And you have to be able to maybe set what your intentions were as a parent aside, because we all come into parenting with the best of intentions. And listen, I do this work because I so deeply never want another child to feel how I felt. And I don't ever want a parent to ever feel disconnected from their children. But I've also prepared myself as much as I can that no matter how deeply I do this work and how committed I am to it, my son still may come to me one day and go, you totally screwed me up. Because there may be something that I'm not giving him that he needs that I don't know about yet. And I'm at least healed enough from my own traumas to know that I can contain that, sit with him at a table and go, I love you, tell me more. Instead of, well, I did the best that I could. And if that's not good enough, that's your fault. I will always want to hear more about his experience. And so it's never too late as a parent. We have to be willing to kind of fall on the sword when our kids say, you hurt me.
Wow. Has been so good. Why don't you tell me more about the work you do behind the scenes and really helping parents nail this and get really the gift of this type of parenting?
Yeah, so I offer, are you talking about like my offer? Is that what you mean?
Like the containers. Like, do you have one-on-one? Do you have group work? Do
Yeah.
you have
Yeah.
retreats? Do you have memberships? Like, how can we get involved?
Yeah, so I offer one-on-one is recommended because it is deep work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is the most transformative. And it's actually called the Transformational Parenting Program because it absolutely will transform your life. And that is not a stretch to say. I have done the Transformational Parenting Program myself. My husband did it. It is absolutely transformational. So I do offer a one-on-one and I do actually offer a group as well. Some people really love knowing that there's other parents out there that will say, you know what, you're not alone. And I'm going through this too. And they just love that dynamic. And so I do also offer the transformational program in a group setting.
Mm-hmm.
And then for people that maybe want the transformational program but just don't have the 12 weeks, like they just want it condensed, I do have a shorter program that is the same 12-week kind of meat, but it's just in 10 weeks. So it's just a shorter, and then the sessions are a bit longer. So instead of being, between 50 and 75 minutes, they're 75 to 90 minutes. And so
Mm.
just expect that they're just going to be a little bit longer. And then they're all virtual because I want to be able to serve everybody. And anybody, that is willing to go Zoom and go deep with me, then I want to be able to offer that.
Amazing. We'll be putting the links in the chat. What I'd like to suggest is, are you able to do like a quick call for someone to kind of lean in and
Yes.
see which of the offers? Okay, so we're going to be
Yes.
putting a link in the chat and in the first of all in the show notes, but also in the pinned comment. And what is going to be there is a call that you can book, and you can sit with Jamie, and she can kind of lean in and see where you're at and which of the offers is like the best place for you
Yes.
to go.
Yes. Yeah, I offer a free session for anybody. So the first
Hmm.
session is always free.
My last question for you is, what are you struggling with as a parent today?
Ooh, you know what's really up for me right now is, and this is gonna sound super cheesy, but it's truly my vulnerability right now is my son is 7. I'm enjoying this age so much. He is so
Mm,
fun. I'm really having a hard time with him getting older,
mm,
honestly. Um, And that's new for me. I will be totally honest and tell you that for a lot of his age stages,
mhm,
I've needed space. I've needed a lot of my own time because he's a very busy boy and it's overwhelming sometimes. And it like takes a lot of emotional and physical energy to spend time with him.
mhm,
And I'm noticing that this age, especially, it's completely shifted. And now my husband and I have talked about it. We're like, he is so fun. We can't get enough of him. And so it's completely shifted. And now, like when memories pop up around him being younger, I'm at that phase where I'm like, it's equal parts painful to see
mhm,
pictures of him younger because I like crave the baby and the toddler and all the things. But it's also like, I just want to put him in a little bottle and keep him 7 forever because it's just such a fun age. And I'm really struggling with like, I don't want him to get older. I really don't. Like, I can't imagine him being 14 and 21 and leaving. And, it's very much up for me right now. And I can't stop time. And I wish I could. I really do.
mm,
That's honestly my biggest struggle. We have a great vibe right now.
mm.
And I have to say that, yeah, that's the hardest thing for me right now.
I don't have children, but I know we want children. My husband loves kids like nothing. And often he'll invite like my sister's son, or like he's always having kids around because I think he wants to play and kind of imagine himself
Yeah.
as a dad. I look at him and he's the kind of parent who wants to give the child everything. I don't want the child to
Hmm.
cry. And I'm the kind of parent who says, yeah, I can love you and say no at the same time. And so
Yeah.
when I look at us parenting this baby, I kind of get scared because I think when we have our own babies, who kind of have that struggle because he doesn't want the
Mm-hmm.
child to cry. And I'm like, I don't want you to cry, but I kind of have like a limit beyond
Mm-hmm.
which you might have to cry
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes enough is enough and you
Mm-hmm.
won't take me for a ride. And so I think my
Mm-hmm.
fear is around how we will do that dynamic of he wants
Yes.
to go all out for the baby. And I'm like, yeah, I'm willing to go out until I feel like this is getting to be a spoiling time. And hopefully we'll get through that. But I kind of, that's my fear. Like, I wonder what will happen when we have a baby. What was your
Yeah.
hardest, what was your hardest bit of doing this with your husband and kind of
Mm.
being like on the same place? What was the
Mm-hmm.
hardest part of that? Because he has his background, you have your background, you
Mm-hmm.
have this thing to do together, and somehow you have to kind of speak the same language or something like that. What was the
Yeah.
hardest part for you? Because as we're speaking to someone on this call, they're like, I probably could do this, but my husband is a dictator or he's
Yes.
a,
Yes.
yeah.
This is very common, actually, that the mother wants to go one way and the husband wants to go another. So it's a very
Mm.
valid question. It was somewhat similar in our house. My husband was definitely a little bit more like, nope, this is how it needs to be. We lay the hammer down, blah, blah, blah. So I can relate to that. What I will say about it is I just did my own thing with it. I was like, okay, well, see how that works out for you with my son. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to seek out my own coaching for my own journey. And my son started to witness how my son, how, or sorry, my husband started to witness how my son was responding to me and how there was so much less reactivity and more cooperation,
Mm.
and came to me one day and was like, I I kind of want to get coached on this too. I'm curious. And so I got him in touch. I did not coach him. I got him in touch with another person through the program that I got coached on when I got certified, and he got coached. So, the advice that I would give, and this is going to be different, obviously, for every dynamic. My husband's also very willing and committed to growth and change.
Mhm.
So, although he was resistant in the beginning, as soon as he saw this shift, he couldn't deny it anymore. And I knew that would happen. So, I like trusted that process for him because I was like, we'll see. And I knew it would happen. And it did. You know, there has to be some level of alignment, right? Because children can sense when there's disconnection. And I think that can be very dysregulating for children. But if you are curious, I think you should do it. I think that you follow your instincts. That's what I did. And I've never looked back. I don't regret it. I'm so much more happy as a parent. I was so overwhelmed and exhausted and burned out. And I just like enjoy my child more. I really, really do that. There was a lot of years early on that I just truly was like, really, this is like parenting, this is awful. Like it was so hard. And that's like a true honest
Mm.
experience. And I felt like all I did was fight and argue and then feel guilty, and then it was just this cycle. And so truly it does not have to be that way. It really doesn't. And yeah, so I would say follow your instincts. And even if maybe at first your spouse is like, no, do it anyway. See what happens, you know? Follow your instincts and see what happens. And you might be really surprised at what comes of it.
I have learned that the biggest agent of change is when you can just be a light in the room. When you can just focus on doing your work and showing up as the person that you desire.
Mm-hmm.
And you can show up
Yeah.
and be that relationship that you desire. When you can just give up, like trying to get your spouse to do stuff, like just give up, let them be, let them get to their rock bottom and kind of just love them from a place of I'm doing my work and I just want the best for this person. And if they're not willing to
Mm-hmm.
meet me halfway, that's fine. Like just being a
Mm-hmm.
light, a candle in the room with self-believing eyes of saying, when your time is right, you'll get to it. But for now,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna do me. I'm gonna do my thing. I'm gonna heal, and I'm gonna just show as a light in the
Yeah.
room if that's what it takes. But it is
Yeah.
so hard. Like it is really so hard to do. I'm really very appreciative of this message. And for you who is listening, really thank you so much for showing up and for having an opening that there is a different way to do this parenting work, because a lot of people don't have an opening. But if you're still listening, you do have an opening, and you do want a shift, or you see how this could work for you. So I really want to celebrate you for showing up and being open to the universe and what it has to offer, and trusting that we're not crazy to bring up this topic. And the best way you can support this work I do or Jamie's work is, one, if you feel like you're being led into this work, get to the either pinned comment or show notes and book a call. But the other way why you may be listening to this particular episode is there is a first degree connection whose parenting life depends on this episode, and only you has a connection to them. And so really what this podcast invites you as a listener to do is it invites you to gift this to somebody else. So I want to take a moment and think, in whose hands would this episode be a life change? Like, would it be life changing for the way they do things? Who needs this information as badly as they need to breathe? Who's been through hell and back with their kids? Who's cried tears and you're like, I wish I had a magic bullet for how they relate with their kids? Who do you know that deserves to enjoy their life as a parent? This is your opportunity to kind of lift this episode and just put it in their private space. And the only thing you have to say is, I watched this interview and I thought about you. I hope you find it helpful. That's all you have to do. And by doing that, this message will reach the people that are crying for the help, because Jamie wouldn't be on this podcast if there wasn't a cry in the world for her message. And it's my belief that everyone who comes here, it's because somebody in the world is kneeling, praying, crying, and the only solution is in the message of the person who is here. So that's how you can help. And the other thing is really grab that up and look around. Do they allow you to rate? Do they allow you to review? Do they allow you to comment? I don't know. Just do it. It really helps more than, for this work to get out in the world. And if it's blessing you, I'm appreciative that you would want to help. If you feel led to help, thank you. Jamie, we are getting to the end. How would you like to send us off?
With, I think, a message of hope. I don't want parents to feel that they're walking away with a feeling of, oh gosh, I just have the weight of the world on my shoulder and I feel so much pressure because I have so much power. I think it's hope. I think that is hopeful. And I think it's a beautiful thing. And I think knowing that we have this beautiful connection with our children and that we can influence them in these beautiful ways, I think it's hopeful. I think it's incredible. There's nothing else like it. The parent-child connection, it is primal. It is on a level, I remember when my son was born, as soon as I saw him, we didn't find out the sex. And as soon as I saw him, it was like two equal parts. It was like I've known him forever, but also I had never seen him before. And I don't want to ever lose that with him, no matter where he ends up in the world, no matter what he does. That child should always know that he is loved, that he is supported, that he is beautiful and unique and perfect, just like every child deserves to feel. And I know that every parent listening to this wants their kid to feel the same. And that's truly the message of hope, is that when we shift, our children shift. And one generation of parents who shift the way they think about their kids and shift how they communicate with their children, I truly believe will change the world. That's really what I believe, to my core.
I believe the most influential relationship is one with your parent. Like, it's one Absolutely. Of those really influential. And so if there is anyone who can help your child, it's you. If there's anyone who can encourage them to change, it's you. If there's anyone who can help them heal, it's you. And you might as well use that to your advantage instead of sending them to the world and hoping all goes well. And it's never really too late, as Jamie said,
it's never too
start
late.
this relationship. Doesn't matter how old they are, like you can make this happen. Jamie, we really appreciate your time. We celebrate all of the years you spent in the wilderness, gathering all these things and using your tears and frustration and building these blocks so that this moment could turn out the way it's turned out. Because I know that it's the tears, it's the mistakes, it's the frustrations, it's the fights that have added up to this nice way of looking at the world and seeking to be a better parent. And so we really want to celebrate you. Because of you, we don't know how many parents will choose to step up and heal this relationship and change the world. So we really celebrate you and honor you for being on the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you. That is so kind. Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you so much.
All right, my friend, till next time, I hope this was helpful. And if it was helpful, I hope you do the needful. I'll talk to you very soon, sending you light and love. Thank you for joining this conversation on the World's Best Kept Secret podcast today. If you feel ready to stop keeping your work a secret, head over to primajope.com and request a free conversation. Until next time, please remember that there's no prize in keeping your work a secret.